Welcome in everybody to episode 4 of Midweek Meetings. I am at KnockdonwnNico with the camera alongside Pr3ssix.
What's up?
What is this? Week 3 of the NFL season has concluded. This week was all over the place. Let's just throw it out like that. This week was completely all over the place. We're going to recap some games. Then we're going to go into some headlines, into our predictions for the games, our auto lock, and then fantasy football, and to finish it up, our fun question. So you're going to start with the games from this week. I mean, these games were all over the place. We're going to start off with the Texans versus the Vikings. I mainly wanted to highlight this. The Vikings won. They won pretty dominantly, you could say, but the main question here is what I was going for is, are the Vikings the best team in the NFC so far?
So I predicted the Vikings to win here. I just had a feeling having to be at Minnesota, and I watched that Texans game against Chicago, and the Texans, in my opinion, have just not had it all together on offense, especially with Joe Mixon out last week versus the Minnesota Vikings. They just weren't functioning on all cylinders. And are the Vikings the best team in the NFC? My answer is no. I think they've they've played some. Their competition looks good on paper. I mean, they played CJ Stroud and the Texans. They played the 49ers, who are one of the best teams in the league. But they also played the Giants. I mean, they looked dominant in the Giants win, but still, I think their strength of schedule is a lot easier than what it's been made out to be so far. I feel like they played the 49ers without Christian McCaffrey. That whole team looks different without Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion. And then the banged up Texans last week without Joe Mixon. Those are two teams who have not been able to expose the Minnesota's run game really with Cam Akers instead last week. And I think we even saw it with Jordan Mason in that San Francisco game. Like he was still dominant. So I think this week will be a big test for the Vikings coming up against the Packers, who have been run dominant for the last 2 weeks without Jordan Love. I think this will be their biggest test. And if they beat the Packers, I'm willing to say they're a top 3 team in the NFC.
They're looking like it so far. Like you said, they play the Packers, who their defense their defense has been really good. We'll get into the Packers actually when we recap the next game, but yeah, I don't know. They didn't have Joe Mixon, the Texans, but I don't know. The Vikings team is just playing like overall as like a complete unit. Like they don't really jump out to you on defense, like as like a super, insane defensive team, but they're putting together, like putting down some good teams. Granted, they were a little injured, some of these teams, but like not a high scoring with these teams that they're facing. So, like you said, we'll see how they do against the Packers. Sam Darnold has been playing really well. That helps out a lot. And, it definitely helps when you have Justin Jefferson. But even with Jordan Addison not playing, I think it's Jalen Naylor has stepped up and he's been doing a whole lot as well. So the Vikings look good. I'd probably say they're one of, the front runners, at least now, for the top seed in the NFC, but only time will tell. Next game is going to be the Packers and the Titans. The Packers won. I'm not really going to focus on them. I'm going to focus more on, are the Titans the worst team in the AFC?
I think the Titans are not the worst team in the AFC. And here's why. I think the Packers defense is a tough defense to go against. They're number one in takeovers through the first 3 weeks with 9 takeovers. They're averaging 3 turnovers per game, which is absurd. And it's a big turnaround from last year. So this Packers defense is new. No one really knew what it looked like coming into the season. So it's a big task for Will Levis, who's leading the league in turnovers as a quarterback. So this was just a bad matchup for them defensively, I think. Um, but I think the Titans defense is very underrated. Their secondary is solid. Their front five are decent as well. I think the biggest question for the Titans is that offense, and can they get it going with Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley? Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins have to make plays. Hopkins made a name for himself last week for the first time all season, and Calvin Ridley was absent. And I think if those two guys are clicking at the same time, this Titans team is not as bad as people make it out to seem. Although they're not that great, but they're not the worst team in the AFC in my opinion.
I think the Titans, in order for them to win, is to not have a Will Levis meme happen. Week 3, this was what he got. His head was into the turf, and a defender's groin area was on his helmet. So that's the meme of this week for Will Levis. But I think they're kind of in the same boat as the Cleveland Browns, almost the Titans, where it's their defense looks bad because of how much they're on the field or how bad the offense is to where the defense can't get a rest. Now, I don't think the Titans defense, is like top 5, in the league or whatever, but I think their defense is solid enough for them if they have a bad game to be in contention for a win. I mean, they lost by 7 to the Jets. They lost that game because of Will Levis turnovers. So I think if Will Levis does less mistakes, I think the Titans have a pretty good shot of winning most games, or at least staying competitive in most games. Like, they should have won against Chicago, but because Chicago had no offensive touchdowns that game, but Will Levis turned the ball over. So I think it just comes down to, can Will Levis be a better than top 32 quarterback? The next one, we're going to touch on this one super quickly, not going in too much, but Bo Nix gets his first career win, and it was a pretty dominant win against the Bucks, although he didn't throw a touchdown pass, but it was still a dominant win for the Broncos, and I think it was a surprise for most fans.
Yeah, this was definitely a surprise for me. I had the Bucks as my auto lock last week, so I'm now 1-2 in my auto locks, but that's besides the point. I think the Broncos, they figured something out. Their defense looked pretty good against Baker, who had been playing very good coming into that game. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season shapes out for the Broncos. And I think it's probably not going to be this year, but maybe next year they might be considered a playoff contender if they can figure things out on offense and pick up some big free agency deals and get that defense built up as well.
Yeah, I think everyone focuses on Pat Surtain, and then the rest of the Broncos defense was just non-existent. They played good against the Bucks. Obviously, I feel like they're not that good against the rush, the Bucks, or against the run, the Broncos are, and the Bucks didn't really capitalize on that too much. Granted, because they were down by like 3 scores within the first quarter of that game, but it just, yeah, I mean, whatever mojo Tampa Bay had. Someone put it on Twitter. I don't remember who it was, but it was the Lions curse. The Rams went toe to toe with them, and then they lost by 31 to the Cardinals. The Bucks beat the Lions. Now they lose by like 19 or 20, however many points it was, to the Broncos. So maybe it's the Detroit Lions, being competitive with them or winning curse. But Baker didn't play his best game. The run didn't look too good outside of Bucky Irving, which I was looking at some stats. This is more on a fantasy side thing, but Bucky Irving, he overall still has less touches and less snaps than Rachaad White, but he is way more productive at running the ball than Rachaad White. So it wouldn't, I wouldn't put it past them if the Bucks start using, I just forgot his name, the rookie Bucky Irving, more in running situations that aren't late in the fourth quarter in a close game because he's a little more explosive. He's a little more quicker than Rashard White, and that's something to look for if he's still available on your fantasy league. So we'll just have to see what happens with that run game with the Bucks because Rashard White's just not cutting it for them, and I think that doesn't help out Baker, especially if Baker's struggling in a game like the game against the Broncos. Moving on, the Panthers put up 36 points in Andy Dalton's season debut. As much as I like Bryce Young, this is not a good look for Bryce Young.
Wow, man. I almost picked the Panthers to win this game. I should
almost did
have.
as
I
well.
knew they were going to do it. I just knew Andy Dalton had that magic touch. Um, but yeah, Andy Dalton looked good. I think he was the first quarterback this season to throw like 300 plus yards and 3 touchdowns in a game this season yet. So that's pretty exciting. And I wonder if this really is more of a tell that Bryce Young isn't developed or if Bryce Young just isn't good. And I would lean towards Bryce Young just hasn't had that development that he needs. If you throw rookie Jordan Love in here, for example, I don't think Jordan Love does good behind this Panthers team either. I think the difference is these rookies need to be developed more when there's not really many established leaders on that Panthers team. And I think the lack of that, especially on the offensive side of the ball, has not helped Bryce Young at all. And so I don't think Bryce Young is a bad player, but I think the situation he was put in is pretty bad. Most of Andy Dalton's success from Sunday came from his experience in the league, in my opinion. So with that being said, I think it's not that bad of a sign for Bryce Young. I think it just shows that Panthers handled the situation wrong and that he just needs to sit for a few years, develop, and he'll be better when he comes back.
I agree. I think that game came off of Andy Dalton's 14 seasons of being in the league and just experience and everything. But yeah, I agree. I think Bryce Young just needed to be behind someone and like learn. If you go back in like his football career, I'm not sure if he sat behind anyone in high school at Modern Day. I think this is where he went. When he went to Alabama, I'm pretty sure he sat behind someone. I'm not sure if it was Tua or Hurts or both of them at one point in time. So every point, obviously, I'm not 100% sure about high school, but at least college, he was behind someone and like essentially was learning from someone and not playing for a year or two. And then he got his opportunity. So I think that's what they needed to do for Bryce Young. Obviously, it didn't. We'll get more into Bryce Young in a couple minutes here with some trade rumors and stuff about Bryce Young. But yeah, I think it was a bad situation overall. But I think unless Andy Dalton gets hurt, I think Andy Dalton is QB for the Panthers for the rest of the season. Like I said, unless he gets hurt for some reason. But I think the Panthers, you can say it's something to more cheer about if you're a Panthers fan, but because you may win some more games. But Andy Dalton is going to be QB1 for the entire rest of the season without a doubt. Moving on, our last recap for this week, Jane Daniels, he set the rookie completion record against the Bengals, and he won the game. That would have been embarrassing if he didn't, but yeah, he broke the rookie completion record for a game. I think he was 21 of 23, which comes out to, I think, 91 or 92% completion percentage. So Jane Daniels, I know Kurt Benkirk said this as well, but Jane Daniels is looking like the best quarterback from this draft.
Yeah, this crazy game from Jaden Daniels. I mean, this was like one of the best rookie games of all time. Like, I saw a stat, I think it was the first game in like forever where there wasn't a punt the whole game. I mean, and Jaden Daniels last week he didn't have any drives that didn't end in points. And that happened week 3 and week 2, which is absurd to think about.
I saw
That
that stat
means
as well.
that means the Commanders hadn't punted in 2 weeks. They haven't punted since week 1, which is crazy. That's unheard of in the NFL. So this is really good for Jaden Daniels and Jaden Daniels believers and Commanders fans. This is big, especially he was kind of forgotten about with guys like Drake May and Caleb Williams coming into this draft. And I think he's definitely looked like the best rookie QB so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's the best rookie QB so far. I think he's the front runner for Offensive Player of the Year, which is my prediction at the beginning as well. But I did see that stat. It was, it was, or it was a similar stat to that, but in his first couple of games, right? They never punted against the Giants, and they never punted against the the Bengals, which I think the stat was 2 games where they haven't scored. They've scored on every drive outside of a kneel down, and I don't remember what the exact stat was, but they put Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, I think one or two other quarterbacks on that chart next to him. They have a combined 2, and Jalen Daniels has 2 of those games in the first 3 games of his career, which is absolutely insane. So as long as he keeps up this pace, or even slightly declines a little bit, as long as he keeps up some sort of pace like this, I think it's going to be a runaway for Offensive Rookie of the Year for Jaden Daniels. And Commanders fans have something to cheer about. I don't think they're going to make playoffs this year, but who knows? Maybe next year they pick up a couple people in free agency or something as well, and then they go ahead and potentially become a playoff contender by next season. Moving on to our headlines, like I said, Bryce Young says he was open to anything, included being trading. Some of the teams that were rumored included the Jets, the Rams, the Dolphins, the Seahawks. Now, I did see something, I don't remember who posted it, but I did see a post saying that the Panthers have already declined multiple trade offers for Bryce Young.
Yeah, this Panthers organization does not want to give up Bryce Young. I think they made that clear. And so it'll be interesting. Uh, yeah, I've heard there's definitely a lot of teams interested in him. And I wonder which situation is really best for Bryce Young because, maybe one of these other teams would help spark his career. But we'll see how it shakes out. Um, I think Bryce Young is going to be okay if he stays in Carolina. He'll probably sit the rest of this year as long as Dalton doesn't get hurt. He has this whole year to learn behind Dalton. Maybe they re-sign Dalton again, get him in the next year, give him another year for Bryce Young, and then Bryce Young will probably look better. And this Panthers organization might be able to turn it around in the next 3 years.
I agree. Some of the teams that were rumored, like the Jets, the Rams, the Dolphins, the Seahawks, I feel like if he were to get traded, I feel like Jets, you learn behind Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks of this generation, without a doubt. I feel like that'd be really good for Bryce Young. Or even, if he were to say get traded to Seattle, he learns behind Geno Smith. And, Geno Smith may not be the greatest quarterback of all time or in the NFL, but I think it would be a really good learning process for Bryce Young to learn behind someone who's essentially been a journeyman quarterback who kind of had a similar beginning to his career. Started out really no like mentorship or whatever, just got thrown in the first game. Jets did horrible those couple seasons he was with, switched teams to back up, and then he gets to Seattle and finally becomes a starter. So I feel like if Bryce Young could learn from either someone like an Aaron Rodgers or a journeyman quarterback that's been in the league and has had to proven himself and is a starter currently, I feel like that would be a good situation. But Carolina's so far been clear. They don't want to trade him. I don't know what the trade details were. People were murmuring that at best he's a second round pick, which I think honestly, if they were to trade him, they're going to want at least a minimum 1 first round pick, probably 2 first round picks for Bryce Young, which I don't think teams are going to be willing to shelf out. Okay, moving on. We're going to talk about the Devonta Smith injury and the rumor, not really a rumor, you may have seen the videos online. Saints D lineman Peyton Turner apparently spitting on him when he was on the ground unconscious. First off, the Devonta Smith injury, I think it was a concussion. That was a big hit. People are arguing, should they have blown the whistle? Should they, kind of what should they have, the refs cause that injury, something like that?
No, I think it's just unfortunate. Hope he's all right. I think he's all right, but he's probably got a concussion, so we'll see what his
He
timeline for
does.
return is. So yeah, I did see the video circulating. It's pretty crazy. I also saw the late. I mean, they got him for a late hit too. I mean, the rest didn't, but they're looking at a late hit when you look at the replay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he goes in. He's lying on the ground with no helmet. The guy goes in with his helmet and just smashes him and then spits on him. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, if the NFL sees that video, it's got to be a fine in my eyes. I don't think them necessarily calling the play dead was, or the fact that they didn't call the play dead. I don't think that's a big deal. You see that a lot of times. I mean, receivers are wrapped up and they take a while to blow the whistle, especially like with guys who are talented like Devonta Smith, who sometimes are able to break away from those tackles or get that extra yard. They do that a lot. So I wouldn't blame the refs in this situation. I think it's just an unfortunate turn of events, and I hope he gets better.
It kind of reminded me of that Devontae Adams hit a little bit back when he was playing with Green Bay. I think it was against
Oh yeah,
Chicago. That's kind of what that hit reminded me of. It was very similar in a sense. 2 guys wrapped up on him, and then the third guy just comes in and with a kill shot, essentially. Moving on to our next headline. There weren't too many headlines, not super important ones anyway. I think the big one was Bryce Young, but this is a big one. Derwin James suspended 1 game for player safety violations on his hit to the helmet against Pat Freiermuth. I think it was called unnecessary roughness on the field, and then I guess later in the week Sunday night, Monday, they just put the hammer down and said Derwin James will be suspended for 1 game. I feel like he's been suspended before for something like this. So, I mean, I don't think he's really a dirty player. He just likes to lead to the head and with his helmet.
yeah, and I don't think this is any coincidence, but they do happen to be playing the Chiefs in Week 4. So not
Mm.
saying the Chiefs are paying the refs or anything, but Derwin James is the captain of that Chargers defense in the most part. He is a veteran in that locker room. And so the Chargers are going to struggle without him next week against Kansas City. And it's very suspicious, you know. They didn't spend a lot of helmet to helmet hits in the past. So why now? You know what I'm saying? I mean, the fine should be enough, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much he got fined for, but yeah, I mean, he's going to be suspended without pay for that game for, according to the NFL thing, it's repeated violation of playing rules. So maybe that's why they threw in that suspension, because he has essentially done this before, whether it's in the same season or in a previous season. He's going to appeal it, but, we'll see if it ends up getting upheld or if it gets taken away. I'm going to assume, since it's a repeat offender pretty much, it's not going to get taken away. It's going to be upheld. So it's going to be a big loss for the Chargers. It's going to be a big loss for the Chargers on defense, especially going into that game against Kansas City. Speaking of Kansas City, I didn't really add this to the list, but the flags at the end of that game were crazy.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that one call in the end zone, how's that not a PI, man?
I have no idea. That should have been PI, and then you could tell the next drive they were just doing makeup calls because some of that stuff was a little
Yeah,
questionable as well, but they were 100% doing makeup calls because they
that's
knew they
exactly what
missed a
I
big
said.
one.
I was like, they saw that PI that they missed in the end zone. They're trying to pay him back here. They're trying to make, who are they playing? The Falcons, right?
Yeah, they were playing the
Am I tripping?
Falcons.
They're trying to make the Falcons feel better about that, but that's unexcusable, man. I mean, even the an analyst who came in like in the call was like, that should have been flagged. That was an obvious PI. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, that was just bad.
yeah, it was really bad. Moving on. Anyway, those are the main headlines for this week. Pretty much that are obviously out right now. Moving on though to our predictions for the game. Last week was not my week. I went. Let me pull it up. I went 6-10. I fell to
Oh,
24 and
Nico.
24. I fell to 24 and 24 on the year, and I think you are now
I went
tied
nine
with
and eight, I
me.
think. Or 9-7. Yeah, 9-7. I went 9-7, so
Yeah, so now we're
I
both
kind of
at
came back a little
24.
bit. We're both at 24 and 24. So it's interesting to see who takes the lead again this week.
Agree to see how many picks we have the same. Starting off with Thursday night football. We have the Cowboys at the Giants.
I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to win this game. They're due for a bounce back game against the New York Giants, who are not good. Malik Neighbors is the only player they got, basically. In my opinion, all the Cowboys got to do is double team Malik Neighbors, get some pressure on Daniel Jones, and this game will be an easy win for them. The Giants secondary is not going to hold up against CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is frustrated. He hasn't had a big game all year, really. And this is his week to show up and show out. This is the Cowboys game, 100%.
I agree. I'm taking the Cowboys. They need a bounce back game, and I think it's going to be done against the Giants. They destroyed the Giants in their both meetings last year. I think it's similar, and I completely agree with you. You take away Malik Neighbors, and the Giants' offense is just nothing, and Micah Parsons is going to tear through that Giants O-line. Daniel Jones is probably going to have an interception or a fumble, and yeah, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, they both need big games after that loss to Baltimore, and it wouldn't. What better way to have a bounce back win than against the Giants and a division rival? Up next, we have the Saints versus the Falcons.
Saints were kind of shut out by the Eagles last game. But on the other side of that ball, the Saints defense also looked pretty good shutting out the Eagles until that last drive or whatever.
Until Saquon Barkley took over.
Yeah, until they realized that they had Saquon on their team. But that being said, I'm taking the Falcons here. If this was a home game for the Saints, I think I'd take the Saints. I think these teams end up splitting this series anyways. So this is the game I think the Falcons are going to win. I mean, they looked pretty good in the early stages of that game against the Chiefs, and they beat the Eagles. So they have a decent amount of experience under their belt. Kirk has been heating up a little bit. I think they're finally figuring out how to use their weapons. Um, that being said, I think they need to give Bijan the ball a little more. He only has one touchdown through the first 3 weeks, and I think that's just not enough for the star player that he's made out to be. So I think for that reason, I'm taking the Falcons here. Their offense is gonna be firing, and yeah,
I'm taking the Falcons as well. I think the Saints just The Saints didn't look good against Philly. I think it's going to be, we'll see if Derek Carr is able to bounce back or he's going to, go back into the Derek Carr form we all know every single year. This game, I feel like, is going to be a big test to see if he bounces back or, he starts on that trend of Derek Carring every year. And I think the Falcons, Kirk has been getting more comfortable in that pocket off his Achilles injury. He's using his weapons more. That offense is slowly coming together. That defense, a little shaky, but can step up, I feel like, when it needs to. And who knows, this may end up being a high-scoring game. This may end up being a low-scoring game, but I think the Falcons are going to pull it out either way. And it's also going to tell whether the Saints are going to, actually be contenders or they're going to start to, be pretenders. Moving on, we have the Rams at the Bears.
I'm taking the Los Angeles Rams. I think the Rams are the better football team. Caleb Williams, he looked a little better last week. I believe he had over 300 yards. So, I mean, the Bears are getting some momentum. This is a home game for the Bears. But I think the Rams, they got it done against San Francisco last week. I think the Bears defense will have to step up. I don't think the Chicago offense is a very good matchup against the Rams defense, who, in my opinion, is underrated. I think the Rams will win this. Matthew Stafford has the Bears number. He's played them many times, and this is a Rams win.
I'm taking the Rams as well. The Chicago offensive line, Caleb Williams threw the ball a lot, but that offensive line has just been horrible. I mean, we saw it on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. DeAndre Swift was like 12 yards on a pitch. First off, that play call was horrible. That's why they kicked Shane Waldron out of Seattle, because his play calling sucks. And it's gonna be questionable play calling for the Bears and a Rams defensive line who is really good. And Jared Verse, as a rookie, has been really solid. And it's going to be the Rams defensive line versus the Bears offensive line. And I think more times than not this game, in critical moments, the Rams defensive line is going to win over the Bears offensive line. And that is going to be the main difference in this game. Even if Caleb Williams ends up throwing the ball a lot and getting a lot of passing yards like we saw last week, he only had 1 touchdown pass though, and it was like a 1-yard slant route. So I'm taking the Rams. I just don't have confidence in that Bears offensive line against the Rams defensive line. Next up, we have the Vikings at the Packers.
Oh, this is a good one. This will be probably the best game of the week, in my opinion. Both these teams are looking good. We'll see if Jordan Love comes back.
I think he is. Or I
Yeah,
think
what
he's
I've heard, he's
planning.
targeting to come back this week. That was his original target, and I think he's going to try to play against Minnesota. This game is a home game for the Packers. Even though the Vikings have been hot, I'm taking the Green Bay Packers. I think this Packers defense, with its 9 turnovers already on the season, will find a way to make Sam Darnold uncomfortable. And Sam Darnold is not going to look like the same Sam Darnold that we've seen these last 3 weeks. He's going to look like the Sam Darnold we saw in New York and Carolina. So I think this Packers defense will be the X factor in this game, like they have been all season. Jair Alexander historically has matched up good against Justin Jefferson as well. So if they take away Justin Jefferson, they're stuck with Jaden Naylor or Jalen Naylor. I don't even know his name. Anyways, Green Bay Packers are winning this game.
I'm taking the Packers as well. This is going to be a good game. I feel like outside of that first game in Brazil, the Packers defense has been arguably one of the best defenses in the NFL. I think it continues here. If they lock up Justin Jefferson, I'm not sure when Jordan Addison's, time of return is. So he's going to be throwing the ball to Jalen Naylor, Joey Munt, tight end, because Hawkinson isn't back yet, and Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones may go a little crazy. It's kind of a revenge game in a sense for Aaron Jones, but I feel like if Sam Darnold makes a couple mistakes, especially if they're deep in Minnesota territory, it's going to be the difference. And especially if Jordan Love plays this game, which I think he's trending to. They gave him fantasy points this week projection, so pretty sure he's close to going to be able to play this game. I'm giving the advantage to the Packers. If he doesn't play, it's going to be a little closer than I think everyone anticipates if Jordan Love doesn't play, but I'm going on the assumption Jordan Love's playing as well, so I'm taking the Packers. Up next, we have the Steelers at the Colts.
Anthony Richardson has not looked good all year. One play, he's throwing 50-yard bombs. The next play, he's tossing it to the defense in the end zone. I mean, there's 3 defenders there. I don't know if you saw the clip.
I
There's
did,
3
yeah.
defenders there. It's just crazy. Anyways, I'm taking the Steelers. Their defense has been good all year. Justin Fields is heating up. He's supposed to start this week as well. No Russ return yet. That's a story for another time. But Steelers are looking good. Defense is playing well. Although they did lose a big guy in Alex Highsmith, their linebacker. He's out for a couple weeks. I don't know what his timeline is. So that is kind of a blow to their defense. But I think TJ Watt is going to apply too much pressure to Anthony Richardson. Their offensive line is not very good over there in Indianapolis. And I think the Steelers are going to get a run game going this week. Najee Harris, he's a solo back this week. Jalen Warren's injured. So we're looking at a Najee Harris dominance
Cordero
game, right?
Patterson.
Najee Harris is going to return to his form like 3 years ago or something when he was good. And it's going to be a Steelers game here.
Yeah, I'm taking the Steelers as well. The defense is going to force Anthony Richardson into some throwing mistakes. And like you said, even if Jalen Warren is out, hey, they got Cordell Patterson as well still. So don't sleep on him. Justin Fields has been doing good at not turning the ball over. I think he has either 1 or 0 turnovers this season so far. So he's been playing at some great football, even if the stats look a little lackluster, especially on the passing side. But yeah, I mean, the Steelers defense is what keeps them in games, and the offense, like I think I said this last week, just needs to do enough to score points and to win. And, barring some turnovers, which we'll probably see from Anthony Richardson or, a receiver fumbling, the Steelers are going to capitalize on those, whether it's field goals or touchdowns. And I see the Steelers winning this game. Up next, we have the Broncos at the Jets.
I think this game will be a little closer than people think, especially since the Broncos looked pretty good last week. I'm still taking the Jets here. Although I think if this game was in Denver, the Broncos might be able to win this game. But I'm taking the Jets here. The Broncos passing game has not looked good. That Jets secondary is going to be able to handle them with ease. The Broncos run game is still kind of up in the air. Not really sure who their lead back is there anymore. They're splitting a lot of time between 3 different guys. So I think the Jets are going to be able to handle this run game. We saw it last week against the Patriots. They held Ramondre Stevenson to like 23 yards. Absolutely killed my fantasy team, but it's okay. This Jets defense is going to be able to control Bo Nix and the New York Jets. Bo Nix is due for another interception. He's already got 4 on the year. Aaron Rodgers is going to dominate this Broncos defense. Garrett Wilson might be locked up, but he's got Mike Williams and Alan Lazard. And they got Breece Hall, who is an absolute X factor in this game, in my opinion. It's going to be a dominant win for the Jets. They're going to get up early. and it's gonna look like how the Broncos played last week against the Bucks, except it's the reverse roles.
I'm taking the Jets as well. One thing the Bucks didn't have was speed on the defensive line. The Jets have speed on the defensive line. So I think Bo Nix isn't going to be able to do as much magic as he did last game, especially with escaping the pocket and escaping some sacks. And yeah, I mean, the Jets defense, the secondary is good. They stop the run as well. It's going to be not the greatest game for the Broncos. We'll just have to see, how the Jets offense does. It seems like sometimes they sputter, sometimes they're really clicking. So we'll just have to see, which one we kind of get next week. If it's the one that's clicking, this game will probably be over by halftime. If it's not clicking, it may be a little competitive for longer than people think. But either way, at the end of the day, the Jets are going to win this game. Up next, we have the Eagles at the Bucks.
This is an interesting one. Both these teams have looked really good some weeks, but some weeks they've looked pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is a home game for the Bucks, I believe, so for that reason, I'm taking the Bucks. I think this is a bounce back week for the Bucks. They're gonna catch the Eagles on their toes early in this game. I think the biggest issue for the Bucks is gonna be containing Saquon Barkley. If they can do that, this game will be a win for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Eagles are probably gonna be without Devontae Smith and AJ Brown this week, depending on how quick that Devontae Smith injury, how quick he heals there. I think he's probably gonna sit this week for the cautionary side. Um, so yeah, they're without their top two wide receivers, and Jalen Hurts will have to turn to Jahan Dotson, and that's just not a formula for success, in my opinion. I think the Bucks offense will get back on track. They'll get Mike Evans involved, who's been kind of silent this season, and so they need to get him back involved. And I think that's a perfect team to do it against. That Eagles secondary, although they looked good against the Saints last week, they also looked terrible against the Falcons the week before. So I think this is a game for the Bucks to expose the Eagles secondary and win the game.
I'm taking I'm taking the Eagles in this matchup. The Bucks, I'm pretty sure they kicked the Eagles out of the playoffs last year. It's going to be a little bit of a revenge game. I think, even if without Devonta Smith or AJ Brown, Jahaz Dawson is still pretty solid. I think he was wide receiver 2 last year at in Washington. Dallas Goedert had a monster game last week. I think he has not as many yards, but I think he's going to have a big game. And then they're going to rely heavy on Saquon Barkley, whether it's running, screen passes. I think Baker and the offense gets back on track for the Bucks, but the Bucks are just prone to giving up big plays. Mike Evans is going to bounce back. He's going to have a monster game. He's due for it. But I think in the end, it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a high-scoring game. But I think the Eagles are going to have the edge in this matchup, even if they're down both their top wide receivers. Up next, we have Cincinnati at Carolina.
Cincinnati, they just lost to the Commanders. They're in an interesting spot here. They're 0-3. Their roster is a lot better than their record, but I don't think it'll be enough to beat the Carolina Panthers. Um, the Bengals defense has not looked good at all this year. They've let up so many points. I mean, they they'd even force a turnover against Jaden Daniels, or they'd even like force a no punts, like we were saying,
Yeah.
no punts for Jaden Daniel and the Commanders. And I mean, that's crazy. The Giants were understandable, but the Bengals, I mean, you just can't excuse that if you're a Bengals player, man. Give me the Panthers. I think the Panthers offense with Andy Dalton at the helm is going to be able to win this game. Although I did see Adam Thielen placed on IR this week, so that'll be interesting development. But I do think they have enough weapons. They have Xavier Legette, Chuba Hubbard had a big week last week. The Panthers offense is going to be able to get it done. And, yep, close win for the Panthers here at home.
I'm taking the Panthers as well. I just don't think
Oh,
that
let's go.
Cincinnati defense is good. I think their offense, on any given day can go toe to toe with pretty much any other offense that they're playing. This defense, though, just giving up so many points, just not getting turnovers, not even having teams punt. The defense for Cincinnati is just horrible. And Andy Dalton at the helm, he knows how to carve up defenses with his experience. He's going to do that. You said Adam Thielen is going on IR. I think Xavier Legette gets more targets. I think he only had 3 catches last week, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think the Panthers are going to be cooking something for the next couple weeks, especially with Andy Dalton. Kind of gives them, a fresh sense, a fresh spark of hope. The season's not over. We can get this done. And I think the Bengals are going to drop to 0-4. And they may be one of the best 0-4 teams we see in a while, low key. Up next, I don't think this is really a debate. We got the Jaguars at the Texans.
The AFC South is always such a weird division. I feel like ever since I've been watching football, the AFC South is always a toss-up. It's always so confusing who's going to win. That being said, I think the Texans have to bounce back this week. They can't lose against the Jaguars. The Jaguars have looked awful. Haven't won a game since November for Trevor Lawrence. There's a lot of questions in Jacksonville right now. Their defense looked terrible on Monday night against the Bills. Gosh, what was it, 34-3 at halftime or something like that?
Yeah, it was
It's the biggest
bad.
deficit in Jaguars franchise history I saw. So, which is insane. This team might be the worst team in the NFL in my opinion. The offense looks so flat. Brian Thomas is the only highlight in my opinion on that Jaguars offense, but he's not enough to beat the Texans. CJ Stroud's gonna bounce back. This will be a Texans win.
I'm taking the Texans. Yeah, the Jaguars offense has been bad. The Jaguars defense has been bad. The Jaguars defense has been worse than the offense, especially last week. And I think Houston, right, they may have bounced back, but I don't really think this is a bounce back because CJ Stroud is going to throw like 3 passes to Nico Collins, and it's going to be like he's going to have 3 catches for like 112 yards or something in like the first quarter. So I don't think this is really going to be too much of a competition. The Texans are going to win this. Jaguars go to 0-4. Up next, we got the Commanders at the Cardinals.
This was my hardest game to pick a side, in my opinion, for this week. I really like both these teams, especially after that Commanders win on Monday Night Football. They look so good on Monday night. But I think this Arizona Cardinals team is going to be able to get it done. They're at home against the Commanders with a rookie QB. Jaden Daniels can't keep it up through the whole season. His stat line right now, if you're to keep that up, is like improbable. There's no way he keeps it up. I think it's a little more down to earth for Jaden Daniels this week. Kyler Murray and that offense are good. We'll see what happens with Trey McBride. I believe he's questionable.
Yeah, he's in
I think
concussion
he's in concussion.
protocol.
Yeah, so that's something to watch as this week unfolds. But even without him, they got Marvin Harrison Jr. That connection has been connecting, that's for sure. And this Commanders defense is one of the worst in the league. I really hate watching the Commanders defense. It's really bad. You saw what they did on Monday Night Football. If that Commanders defense was just a little bit better, this game might go the Commanders' way. But we talked about the Commanders not punting at all. The Bengals also didn't punt at all in that game, which is not a good sign for the Commanders. I think the Cardinals are going to be able to expose this defense, and it's going to be the Cardinals who win.
I'm taking the Cardinals. Yeah, I mean it's the Washington defense is the concern. A ton of they gave up a ton of yards to Cincinnati first off. Second off, they gave up a ton of chunk plays. You know, in the pass game, even in the run game, you know, they were giving up like 14-yard runs to Chase Brown. So I think James Conner's going to have a big day as well. I think Kyler Murray is going to have a big day both in the air and on the ground. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to have a big game. And who knows, this may be a little bit of a shootout this game, but I think that Commanders defense is just not going to be able to keep up with the Cardinals, even if they do keep trading scores. And yeah, I think Jane Daniels comes back down to earth a little bit. Still hasn't made a turnover to my knowledge. I don't think he's turned the ball over yet. Maybe that happens this week. Maybe it doesn't. But I think the Cardinals have a slightly better overall team, especially on the defensive side. And I think that's going to be the difference in this game. Up next, we have the Patriots at the 49ers.
I was debating taking the Patriots just because of their week 1 performance against the Bengals, but we've seen how bad the Bengals have been. So I think the 49ers are going to win this game. I think it'll be closer than people think. This 49ers defense has a lot of question marks right now. They did not look good against the Rams. The Rams are getting stuff done on the ground. Are the 49ers going to be able to stop Ramondre Stevenson? I think that's the story of this game. But I think they will be able to. It's a home game for the 49ers, so that also helps in their favor. I'm taking the 49ers here. Should be a close one, though.
I'm taking the 49ers as well. I think this defense for the Niners, the Patriots aren't a good passing team, and I think it's going to get worse against that 49ers defense. So they're going to rely heavy on the run game, but if they get behind, they're not going to be able to run the ball as much as they want to, the Patriots. Or even if it's, a close game, tie game, one-score game. If it's more than one score, the Patriots aren't going to be able to run the ball as much as they want to, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game between the Niners and the Patriots. Obviously, they're still without CMC. They're out without Debo, but I don't think that matters. Juwan Jennings had a monster game last week. He can probably have another big game this week. I'm not sure if Ricky Pearsall comes back this week or next week. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, they probably don't need him anyway because Juwan Jennings has just been going insane. Ayuk needs to step it up a little bit. Jordan Mason's been pretty solid. Kind of sold one of my parlays last week, but that was kind of just overall on the Niners. As long as they don't choke a lead, I feel like they're going to be good and they're going to win this game pretty handily. Up next, we have the Browns at the Raiders, and I literally have had the ESPN Fantasy app open. This has changed percentages since we've been talking. It was at like 53-47 earlier. Now it's at 51-49.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take the Raiders here. It's a home game for the Raiders. As long as they're not playing in Cleveland, I think they should be able to win, which they're not. So I think they're gonna win. Deshaun Watson and the Browns offense has not looked good. There's not much to be excited about if you're a Browns fan. Myles Garrett also got injured in that game last week, so that's an injury to watch. If he's not playing, this is definitely a Raiders win. Even though the Raiders just lost to the Panthers, I think this is a bounce back game. Antonio Pierce is gonna put some fire into that team. He was pretty upset about how the game went last week, and I think this is a bounce back for the Raiders. I think they're the better team here. Their defense is gonna be able to control Deshaun Watson, and they should win this game.
I'm taking the Raiders. I mean, that Browns offense hasn't looked good, like you've said. Myles Garrett's day-to-day. The Raiders did lose Marcus Epps to a torn ACL though, so that may be a little impactful. Forgot to mention this, but in our headlines, but no quarterback change as of right now for either Jacksonville or Las Vegas. So Gardner Minshew is still QB1 for Las Vegas. I think they get it done as long as if they just make three and outs, 5 plays, 6 play drives for the Browns on offense, that Browns defense is slowly just going to get worn down. It's been like that all season. They've just been getting worn down. And I think, if that happens again, especially early in the game, it's just a bunch of 3 and outs or, 6 play drives, and then they're punting the ball, and Deshaun Watson has a couple turnovers. It's going to be tough for this Browns offense that has been lackluster for the majority of the season already to keep up with the Raiders, even though the Raiders they've looked good. They beat the Ravens, but then they lost to the Panthers. So they've been kind of up and down as well, but I still think I got to go with the Raiders on this pick. Up next, we have the Chiefs at the Chargers.
Man, I wanted to take the Chargers here, but I think the Chiefs are going to win. Derwin James suspended. That's a big blow to the Chargers. Definitely not paid for by the Chiefs. Whatever. I think Justin Herbert, I don't know what his status is for this week. He left that game early last week, I believe in the third or fourth quarter, re-aggravating an ankle injury, excuse me. So we'll see if he plays. It'll be interesting.
He's questionable right now.
Okay, so the Chiefs definitely are going to win this game if Herbert's not playing. Even if Herbert is playing, though, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. See if J.K. Dobbins can continue the groundwork. This Chargers team is very run heavy, and if they get down to this explosive Chiefs offense, I think this could be a problem for them. I'm taking the Kansas City Chiefs because of that.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chiefs as well. Yeah, Herbert is questionable to play. I'm pretty sure he was in a walking boot after that game as well when he left. So, yeah, especially if the Chiefs can stop that run. If Herbert doesn't play, it's going to be Taylor Heineke at QB. But if the Chiefs just stop the run for the Chargers, it's going to be a difficult game for the Chargers. And the Chiefs over the past years have been dominant against the AFC West opponents, and I think that continues. Mahomes is going to do his thing. Rashee Rice had a crazy game last week. Maybe not as crazy this week, but I still think he's going to do pretty good. The running back situation, we'll see how that goes. Still, split carries and stuff between Carson Steele and Samaje Perine, I think it is as well. But aside from that, Mahomes is going to do his magic, and I'm taking the Chiefs. Sunday Night Football game, we have the Bills at the Ravens.
An interesting one. The Bills have looked dominant through their first 3 games. Baltimore got a bounce back win against the Dallas Cowboys last week, even though they almost blew a 22-point lead in the fourth quarter. This Baltimore team's got to find ways to finish the game, and I think they do this week against the Buffalo Bills. I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens this week at home against the Bills. The Bills can't go undefeated this season. It's not going to happen. I think this is one of the games that they drop here. Baltimore has been playing good, even though they're 1-2. They just got to figure out their fourth quarter, whatever their deal is. I think John Harbaugh knows that it's a problem, and he's going to figure it out this week against the Bills. The Ravens defense also has been getting better. We saw it against the Cowboys. I mean, they're getting a good pass rush again. The secondary is looking better. I think they'll be able to contain the Bills better than the other teams the Bills have played. You look at the Bills' weapons. You have Kincaid. Wide receiver 1's probably Shakir as of right now. So talent-wise, those guys aren't big names. Maybe Kincaid is, but Shakir is not. So I think the secondary should not be an issue for them. They have to maintain the run game, and I think they will keep Josh Allen in the pocket. And yeah, it should be a win for the Ravens.
I'm taking the Bills. Like you said, the Bills have looked dominant this season, both on the offensive side and the defensive side. And on the offensive side, it's not all Josh Allen. We've seen games where Josh Allen, doesn't really do a whole lot. And, James Cook ends up carrying or, doing a lot of the work and stuff. I think the Ravens want to win this game. They need to get Mark Andrew involved. He's pretty much been non existent. But if they don't get Mark Andrew involved, it's going to be Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry doesn't have a good game or gets stifled by that Bills defense, it's going to be Zay Flowers and, who else? Maybe Isaiah Likely. That's it. I don't know. It's going to be
Bateman, maybe? I don't know.
Bateman, but Bateman's inconsistent. This game's going to be does the Bills defense show up, and how how much do they show up this game? And I think they're going to show up. They're going to be playing like they have before. I think Josh Allen's going to have to go a little crazy, do some of his magic and stuff that he's done in previous seasons, but it's going to be a close game. I still think the Bills are going to win it, though. Our first Monday night football game of this week, the Titans at the Dolphins.
The Dolphins looked bad last week against the Seahawks. They put up 3 points. Mike McDaniel did not look like the offensive genius that people make him out to be. The Packers are able to do it with a backup running back or quarterback, excuse me, with a arguably worse roster than the Dolphins. And I think the Dolphins just don't have answers. I'm taking the Tennessee Titans here. This game is going to be interesting. I think this Tennessee Titans defense is going to be able to lock down the Dolphins. They're going to have, as of right now, I believe Skylar Thompson was injured in that game. He had a rib injury. I don't know if he's going to be back this week, but if he's not, they got Tim Boyle.
Yeah, I think
playing.
Tim Boyle is going to be starting. I'm not 100% sure, but I think Tim Boyle is going to be the quarterback this week. I'm not sure how long Skylar Thompson's out for.
So last time Tim Boyle started the game, we saw that last year in New York, and it did not go well. And it's kind of a similar situation. They had a good running back there. They had good wide receivers and Garrett Wilson. So I think it's going to be a similar outcome. I'm taking the Tennessee Titans strictly off the defense. This might be the week Will Levis figures it out, maybe. It'll be interesting to see. That Titans offense is such a question mark, but I'm betting on the Tennessee Titans defense to win this game.
I'm taking the Titans.
This
game's going to come down to pretty much one thing, I think. Will Levis and turning the football over. It's going to be if or how many times he turns the football over and where on the field the Titans are when he turns the football over. If he turns it over and gives the Dolphins good field position, I think they at least score a field goal. But yeah, I'm just not confident. You're on your third string quarterback, even though you have Tyreek Hill, even though you have Jalen Waddle, even though you have Devon A-Chain. I don't know, man. That Tennessee defense is low-key a little underrated. It's solid. I think it's going to do enough to get the job done. It's just going to be Will Levis. Does he turn the football over? Maybe he doesn't throw a lot. They give it to Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears. The Dolphins did not look good against the run against Zach Charbonnet or against James Cook in a sense, and Charbonnet's RB2 in Seattle. So, maybe they just run the football a lot, the Titans. But, yeah, I don't know. I just don't have confidence in that Dolphins offense without Tua, and the defense hasn't looked the greatest either. So, I think the Titans get their first win of the season. Moving on to probably the biggest game of the week, the Seahawks at the Lions.
I think the Detroit Lions are going to win this game. The Seahawks, let's be real, their competition hasn't been that great. I mean, they played the Dolphins, they played Bo Nix, I mean, and they played the Patriots, who are all not considered to be great teams. I'd probably consider them all on the bottom 50% of the NFL as of right now. I think this will be a test for the Seahawks. This will show who they truly are. Um, this Detroit Lions defense has looked good. This offense has looked good. They looked especially good last week. I think this is the Detroit Lions game to win. It's at home for the Lions. I don't see a world in where the Lions lose this game.
This game is going to be a high scoring game, and it's going to come down to one thing: Jared Goff throwing a pick six.
All right.
2022, there was a pick six to Tariq Woolen. I think Seattle won by 7 or 3. Not 100% sure. 2023, there was a pick six to Trey Brown. Seattle, I think, won that game in overtime. 2024, 2024, I think he throws a pick six to Devin Witherspoon, and that's going to be the difference in this game. I'm taking the Seahawks. This is going to probably be the best game of the week without a doubt. It's going to be high scoring. It's going to be electric. You know, both defenses are solid, but I mean, we've seen them play 2 years in a row, and both teams have scored 30 plus points in every game. So I think this game is literally going to come down to Jared Goff throwing an interception and or it getting returned for a touchdown. He's done it twice in the past 2 years when he's played Seattle. I think he continues the streak, this time to a different cornerback. And that's going to be the difference in this game, I think. Whether this game is won in overtime, whether it's won by 6 or 7 points or 3 points. But I'm taking Seattle. I might even put a little parlay on a Devin Witherspoon INT or something. We'll have to see. Anyways, those are our predictions for the week. And let us know in the comments what teams you have winning this week as well. Moving on to our auto lock game. Who's your auto lock this week?
I feel like I'm just a curse to anyone I say is an auto lock, but I'm gonna have to go with my auto lock being. Oh, this is rough. I think it's got to be the New York Jets this week. I think they have the most favorable matchup. This defense is gonna be able to handle this Broncos offense. Is not very good. Yep, I don't have much more to say than that. It's the Broncos or the Jets, I mean.
Thinking about Houston versus Jacksonville, but I feel like that game can get a little weird. So I'm going with my auto lock is going to be the Cowboys over the Giants. Giants got steamrolled by the Cowboys last year. I know they have Malik Neighbors this year, but Daniel Jones is going to turn that football over, and if the Cowboys get off to a hot start, the Giants just aren't catching up. So I'm going with the Cowboys as my auto lock this week. Moving on to fantasy football. Hey, I got the dub this week or last week, however you want to put it. I'm going to not give a shout out to Rashid Shaheed because he got me a solid 0 points. But then again, pretty much both of us played with 8 or 7 players. I'm not even sure how many people play. But he had Joe Mixon, who was out and he forgot to take him out or just didn't switch it, whatever the reason. So we pretty much were playing both down a man. But I ended up winning, got the first win of the season. I'm still last, or I'm second to last still based off of the tiebreaker points. So we'll get into pending moves in a minute. But how did you do this week?
I had a pretty good win. Let's see how many points I had here.
You had a monster game in our league.
Yeah, I think I had, hold on, I'm trying to get to my league real quick.
135.68 points.
Yeah.
You won by almost
Like you said,
40 points.
135 points, pretty solid. Big week from all of my guys. Across the board, really. I think almost everyone put up 20-point games except Trey McBride, the defense, and the kicker, which is pretty good. Um, yeah. Although the only bad thing, I got a couple lingering injuries that I gotta watch here. I got Devontae Smith in concussion protocol, Trey McBride in concussion protocol, and Brock Purdy with back soreness. I think
Oof.
Brock Purdy should be good, hopefully. But the other two are kind of iffy. I gotta watch. My backup tight end right now is Hunter Henry, which I'm not too thrilled about
I don't think Devonta
against the San
Smith
Francisco
plays.
49ers.
I'm just
Yeah, I
going off
don't
that
think Devontae
hunch.
Smith plays either. So then I have DK Metcalf in my flex right now. I can definitely move him up to that wide receiver one spot. But then if you're looking at my bench, I got some interesting options. None that I'm really too stoked about. Jacoby Myers had a 20-point game last week. I could put him in there, but he's playing the Browns. I got Cortland Sutton, which not too confident in him either. And I also have Jerome Ford. Um, he's been okay this year. So that's why I'm trying to make a pending move. Waiver claim for Bucky Irving. I doubt it'll get to me, but I'm gonna try to snag him. I'm 11 out of 12, I think, on the waiver order, so I'm probably not gonna get him, but I'm gonna try. And then another pending move I have is I'm picking up the Texans defense. I like their matchup this week, so I'm gonna pick them up and drop the Chiefs defense. And yeah, that's what we're looking at right now.
You're correct about not getting Bucky Irving because I it's pending, but I am claiming him. I'm dropping
No.
Raheem Mostert. I'm also picking up Khalif. I don't know. I don't even know how to say his name. I'm picking up Shakir. I'm dropping Isaiah Likely. And for this week, I don't know who I'm going to play at quarterback yet. If Jordan Love plays, I may put him in against Minnesota. He did pretty good against Minnesota last year. Goff's only projected for 13 points this week against Seattle. So I got to figure out there. I think I'm going to put Mike Gesicki in at tight end. Schultz has just not been too good, and Gesicki is going to have a pretty fair matchup against Carolina. And then I just need to decide who to put at my flex for this week. Obviously, if I get Shakir, I think I'm going to put Shakir there, even though they are playing Baltimore. Otherwise, I think, if for some reason, if I don't get him, I think I'm going to lean towards Darnell Mooney. You know, it seems like Kirk Cousins likes throwing to Darnell Mooney a little more than Drake London maybe at times. So, especially on some deeper passes. So, I think I may put him in if I don't get Shakir. But I'm banking on getting Shakir and Bucky Irving from the waiver wire. Like I said, I only have one person in front of me for the waiver wire. So, hopefully they don't want either of those players or they don't get through. Also, for some reason, if I don't get either of those players, especially Shakir, I may pick up later in the week Quentin Johnson. I'm a little
So
concerned
who are you
about
taking
that.
first, Bucky Irving or Khalil Shakir?
I have no idea how this. I think I have Shakir going first.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have Shakir
I,
first,
I
and
might
then
get Bucky
it's
then.
Bucky Irving. We'll have to see how
I
it
might get Bucky
goes.
then. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
fantasy.
my flex spot is such a throw up right now, or toss up, not
Mine
throw
is
up.
as
That sounded weird.
well.
I mean, I don't want to put Keenan Allen in there. He hasn't even played a snap this season
Yeah,
yet. Javonte Williams has been bad. My whole bench is not very good. I'm not gonna lie. I gotta make a trade for some bench pieces, I think, honestly. Um, maybe one of my receivers I can trade for some bench pieces. But we'll see how it pans out here.
yeah. We'll see how waiver wire pans out. Right now, as according to the league recap, I have a 57% chance of winning this week. That's before I switch any of my players in and out. You says you have a 54% chance of winning so far. So that may change.
I
We'll have
haven't
to
even
see.
looked at my matchup yet.
You're playing
I
fellas
gotta
from
look at it.
Paris. I'm playing Team Ranjan, who, if I'm not mistaken, has Team Ranjan. Never mind, doesn't even have anyone in this tight end slot, and he's got Singletary. Okay, he doesn't have anyone in his tight end slot, so we'll have to see what he does. He has Evan Ingram on the bench is questionable, so we'll have to figure that out. Hey, if he doesn't put
Yeah,
it in, that's free. It should
my
be
matchup
free.
is interesting. My opponent has Najee Harris in RB2, which is kind of a throw up. I think my running backs are definitely better. I got Taylor and Gibbs in this league, which have been outstanding for me in the first 3 weeks. D Hop had a good game last week. Is he able to do that again? I don't know. That's his flex. And then he has Detroit in his defense, which I do not like.
That's
I
gonna be
think
bad.
that's probably going to be negative points for him, so that's good for me. And then Matt Gay, whatever, kicker, who cares? Um, yeah. So
I was
I'm
reading a
supposed to
stat
win.
somewhere. Brandon
We'll
Aubrey
see.
would be like RB6, like tight end 3. I forget what QB number. Like he would be in ridiculous places with like in different positions if he wasn't a kicker based on his points. Like it was insane. He'd be like tight end
Yeah,
3
Brandon
based on
Aubrey's
his
been really
points.
good.
It's insane. Yeah, we'll just have to
Said
wait
someone
and
say
see.
this is the year of the kicker. Like, there's a kicker making 5 or 6 plus field goals every week, or like Brandon Aubrey's just banging out 60-yard field goals every week.
Yeah,
It's crazy to watch, man.
it
And it's
has.
so weird for fantasy because I mean Brandon Aubrey's literally averaging 16.7 points a game, which is crazy. I think my kicker had 4 points last week, so like that's a huge difference. Where you
And
don't really think of kicker as a make or break
yeah,
in a fantasy roster.
my kicker's been averaging 10.7 a game, but it's gone up every week. 9 week 1 for Harrison Buckner, 10 points week 2, 13 points week 3. Who knows? They play the Chargers. Maybe we'll get 15 for week 4 or something. Should have had 14 this week, but he missed an extra point. So
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I might have to pick up a kicker as well. I'm looking here. Seems like there's a lot of good options out there. So maybe seeing who's available after waivers, maybe pick up some tomorrow,
yep,
and switch them out. So we'll just see how
we
that
will have to see.
shakes out.
Moving on to our final segment, the fun question. I'll start with mine. Okay, so it needs to be a back corner toe tap touchdown. You have $1 million on the line. What wide receiver and quarterback are you taking?
Ooh, good question. Um, is this all time or current?
Does not matter.
All right, I'm just gonna go with current for the heck of it. I think for quarterback, I'm gonna go with Patrick Mahomes. Might be the obvious answer, but I think he's my best bet. And then toe tap touchdown, back of the end zone. This might be weird, all right? But hear me out. I'm taking Mike Williams, okay? When Mike Williams is healthy, he is a red zone money bag. I mean, this guy makes every catch in the red zone, I swear. Jump ball, contested catch, 50-50, toe tap, Mike Endzone or Mike Endzone. I mean, that should be his nickname. Mike Williams is just a beast. Uh, every catch he had for the Jets last week was impressive, and he's just so much fun to watch, man. I think he's such a good red zone threat. Him and Mahomes in the back of the end zone, I think would be perfect. Money every time.
That's a great one. I'm I'm gonna go a little bit of not throwback, but one's currently not playing. They were both on the same team. So quarterback, I'm taking Russell Wilson. Prime Russell Wilson with his moon ball was just, it didn't matter if it was 50 yards downfield or if it was 10 yards. Like, that man had perfect placement on those just impossible catches. And there were a few possible throws. There were a few wide receivers could have went with, but I'm taking Doug Baldwin. That man was a master at just somehow getting 2 feet in bounds in the most ridiculous spots, whether it was on the sideline or in this instance, the back corner of the end zone. One of the craziest releases too at the line of scrimmage. I don't think you could beat that combo. Like that is like that in their primes. That was a disgusting combo.
All right, my question is, if you need time to think about it, I can answer first. But my
Okay.
question is, who's like the most obscure player you can think of that you thought was gonna be like a great player, like a, I don't know, like a, what's it called? Freaking Pro Bowl player.
Like I wasn't expecting them to be one, and they were, or I would thought they.
Like you had high hopes for them, but they just never panned out, kind of thing, you know?
Okay, yeah. Let me think about this. I gotta think.
If you want to think, I can go first. This is a very obscure Packers wide receiver from a couple of years back. I loved watching him play. I was so upset the day we got rid of him. He goes by the name of Jake Kumaro. It's probably a no name to most people. Maybe Packers fans are the only people who know about him. He was also a Bill for a short stint of time. I think he was mainly just a practice squad player though. But this man had the special hookup with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was so upset when we got rid of him. Um, Kumaro was our wide receiver 4 for most of the part when he played with us. But I mean, I loved watching him play. Every catch he had, he was turning up field, fighting for those extra yards. He was so much fun to watch, man. And man, rip Jake Kumaro. He's still alive, but I miss watching him play.
Let me see if I can find this person. I don't know how to spell his name. So let me see if I can find it. But I think I'm gonna go with one of 2 players. I think. Oh man, how do I don't. So the first person would be Christian Hackenberg, which I don't think people were expecting him to light the world on fire, but he didn't even play a snap. I don't even think he played a snap in the preseason. Right, he was non-existent on the Jets. They drafted him with like the second round pick, I think, when Geno left, or Geno still may have been on the team. I don't even remember, but he like never played a snap in professional football, at least in the NFL. The other person, and I can't find him, I'm pretty sure his name was Colin Green. I think it was a wide receiver for the Jets. I can't find any information on this guy now, or even how to spell his name right. He may have changed names. I don't even know, but I swear that guy was good for like 2 years, and then he just disappeared. Like he just disappeared. So I would have to say those 2 people. Let me see if I can find the second person though, like that I was talking about.
I'll just throw another Packers wide receiver in there for fun. Jeff Janis. This one, he's a little more well known. Um, he had the infamous Hail Mary, 2 Hail Mary catches against the Arizona Cardinals, um, in the playoffs, I believe. And then Larry Fitzgerald just destroyed us, but that's besides the point. But Jeff Janis, I think he was like 5 foot something, catching this Hail Mary. Bro, 12-year-old me was like so excited watching this guy play. And he was only a deep threat. I mean, I don't know why, but this guy had no speed. But he was always open 50 yards down the field. So I love that guy. An obscure name who I always thought was super good growing up. And yeah.
You want to know an obscure name? Jeremy Curley.
Mm, it's a good one.
Forgot about that guy. He was solid for the Jets, but yeah, I think I'd have to go with Christian Hackenberg, like I was saying. He was drafted. Yeah, he was drafted in the second round, 51st overall in the 2016 NFL draft. Never played a snap. I don't even think he played a snap in preseason. Never played a snap ever. And I don't think he had the highest, like, oh, he's going to light the world on fire, but people were at least expecting him to play, and he never played.
That's kind of crazy to get drafted in the second round and never touch the NFL field.
I know, it was absolutely wild. Even like when I don't even remember who was quarterback at the time for the Jets in like that era. They got hurt or whatever. And he still didn't play.
That'd be like,
They got someone off the like free agency and had them play.
wow.
They didn't even have him play. Like, it was absolutely crazy.
That's like post Mark Sanchez, right? That'd be like,
That was post Geno Smith, I think, or that may have been Geno Smith's last year as a Jet, if I'm not mistaken. 2016 Geno Smith. Yeah, that was Geno Smith's last year as a Jet. He only played 2 games that season too. And this guy Hackenberg never saw the field. Which is
he's never
crazy.
played in a preseason game either?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think he ever played he may have played in a preseason game, but he never played in a literal game. If you look up on Pro Football Reference, there's literally no stats about him. The only stats about him are his combine.
Okay, yeah, he did play preseason. I'm looking at Christian Hackenberg highlights preseason week 4 versus Eagles.
He never did that. His only transactions was he signed with the Eagles in 2018. He was signed, then waived, then released, then signed to the Bengals practice squad that same year, then got released. This is all in 2018. And then in May of that year, this was before all the Eagles and Bengals stuff, he was traded to the Raiders. I mean, you just look at his whole thing.
I mean, you gotta wonder, man, like, there must have been some off-field issue for him to bounce around that much and never hit the field, especially as a second-round pick. Like, that's crazy.
Dude, I don't think so. He came out of Penn State. I mean, you look at all this. Activated, like deactivated, activated, deactivated, activated. It's just everything with the Jets is deactivated or activated until they traded him.
Well, that's probably because he was probably practice squad third string.
They went out. I remember, I think someone got injured, whoever the quarterback was, and they went out and signed. I don't remember who it was, but they signed a veteran QB. It may have been Tyrod Taylor. They signed him instead of putting Hackenberg in for games. Like, they went out and signed a quarterback off of their couch instead of playing him, which was insane. It just shows you. I mean, you can be a high pick, and I'm not talking like Jamarcus Russell style, but you can be a solid pick, and you may never see the field depending on your situation, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
That is going to wrap up Midweek Meetings episode number 4, though. I feel like this is going to be we got some really good games this week, and I feel like you've got pretty similar predictions for most of these games. So we're either going to get a lot of picks wrong or we're going to get a lot of picks right. It's going to be no real in between. I think we have 3 or 4 different picks. So we'll just have to see. We're getting into that we're starting to get into that, middle half of the season. We're officially going to be a quarter of the way in after these games, or yeah, pretty much, because there's 17 games. So it's going to be fun. We'll see. Anyways, though, guys, thank you guys for watching. If you guys are watching over on YouTube, make sure you guys subscribe. Go check out both of our Twitches and X accounts, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Those links will be in the description. Thank you guys for watching. And until next week's meeting at Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. EST, we'll see you guys later.